What is up, guys? This is the Casual Wrestling Podcast, where each and every week I, the Notorious Nerdy D, break down everything you need to know as a casual wrestling fan. This show now posts every Wednesday weekly on YouTube and podcast networks. Make sure to like and subscribe to the channel to stay up to date with all the cool wrestling content that we post. Let's start off today's show with a little bit of housekeeping. It feels like it's been a minute since I got to record something or do a podcast. I actually had COVID all of last week, starting the night of Elimination Chamber. I started feeling bad and kind of it just completely wiped me out. I was on quarantine. I was locked down. I was in the bedroom. Just had to kind of watch a lot of ESPN, watch a lot of wrestling, watch a lot of TV, and kind of just disconnected from social media, from podcasting, from all that stuff. Kind of gave myself some time to just sit back and reflect on, like, you know, when you're locked in a room and you can't, you know, there's not a lot going on. You can't be around your kids, can't be around your family. You have a lot of time to kind of reflect and think. So it gave me a lot of time to kind of reflect back on the last 6 months of what I've been doing with this podcast, as far as like what we did in what I call season 1 of the podcast versus what we did in season 2 of the podcast. And now as we kind of enter into a third phase of season 3, I was able to reflect and kind of to get an idea of what I wanted to do moving forward, as far as like what's good for my mental health and what's just good for the health of the show. And after reflecting a little bit, I think I kind of came to terms with this idea. The word like back to basics kept popping into my head. And the idea behind back to basics was, I think I just stretched myself out too thin, chasing YouTube numbers, chasing podcast numbers, and doing all those things. So after kind of sitting and thinking for a little bit, I came to the idea that I had the most fun with this podcast when I was podcasting one time a week, cutting that show up into clips and posting those clips on a daily basis. And at some point in time, I got caught chasing the numbers and said, well, if I podcast 2 times a week, I can get twice as many numbers. And if I podcast 3 times a week, and then it became, if I just do this every day, and the show literally became a full-time job that there was no payoff to what I was doing, and it felt like I was just chasing, you know, analytics. And so in the week that I had to kind of sit back and reflect, I wanted to go back to what I found fun about doing this podcast. And that was the initial kind of reach out from like community and making friends and getting to know new people. And in the last couple of months, that's completely gotten neglected because of this chasing content, right? If I'm checking the news every day and I'm recording a new show every day and I've got to cut clips for social media every day, there's no time to interact with anybody. There's no time to build community, which is, at the end of the day, that's what this has all really been about, is just kind of having a creative outlet and a place to do so. So I reflected, and there's a few things that I've kind of come to terms with. One being that I think I'm going to, for the time being, I'm going to shut the Patreon down. And I think that's more of a personal, I appreciate everybody who has donated to me doing this show and given, you know, whatever they have to help push this show forward. But I think that in reflecting, I kind of realized it's never been, I don't want or need the money. I prefer and would rather have the communication, the back and forth, the talking, the positive affirmation of like, keep doing this, I'm enjoying this. That means so much more than a financial donation. So there's a certain feeling of obligation when people start to donate to your show, like and not in a negative way, but just an obligation to show up. And if you feel sick, you have to push through that. And if your kids have something, you got to figure a way around that. And I've never wanted this show to feel like that. I've always wanted this show to feel more like a community. Like I'm showing up to hang out. We're going to hang out. I turn on a camera and I give us a reason to discuss wrestling. So step 1 is going to be shutting down the Patreon or turning it off for a little bit and going back to just, let's just have fun. Let's just talk. Second thing is I'm going to open a Discord, and I've pushed against Discord for a long time because I always felt like it's like the young man's game for podcasting and social media. But the more that I've researched Discord, I think it is definitely the right option. One problem I've run into in the last 6 months is receiving messages from 500 different locations, right? So I get messages on Facebook, I get messages on Instagram, I get messages on Patreon, I get messages on Twitter, and it becomes hard for me to, number one, remember where what came from, and number two, just to always be diligent enough to check on those messages. And I may feel like, well, so-and-so hasn't, reached out to me in a long time, or we haven't had a conversation. And then I go check, Facebook, and there it is. There's a conversation that I just completely forgot about or ignored or I hadn't been on Facebook in long enough. So I think that Discord is a place that I can organize all of the things that go on with this show and create a community where people can discuss the things that we talk about in a very safe environment. And I'm going to be very strict on, like, if you're going to go in there and be a fucking dickhead, you're going to get thrown out of the Discord. I want it to feel like a close-knit group. I really enjoyed when we did the first season of the Casual Wrestling Fantasy League. I enjoyed there was kind of a community aspect that was starting to build, but I didn't nurture it enough I didn't know what to do with it, right? It was people talking, but I didn't know how to nurture that into something that could have been fun long term. And so I think with Discord, we'll be able to kind of create that feeling and create a community where we can hang out and talk about pay-per-views and talk about other stuff, right? I want to expand past just wrestling and get people's opinions on other things. That's why I'm also doing the Nerdy D podcast, which is a little bit about pop culture and things like that. So, but for the time being, shutting down the Patreon, going to start a Discord, going to go back to basics. That's kind of the theme of what I'm deeming this kind of season 3 of casual wrestling content. And in season 3, we're going to go back to the basics. One show a week that I will cut into clips with a heavy emphasis on like creating community inside of Discord and talking to the people that I miss talking to. And then I will branch out with the Nerdy D podcast and create a little bit more diverse content with Lauren, where we do some fun, stupid things. But just, I want this to build into a place that feels like we're just hanging out. And so I know it's been a minute since I got on this microphone, but we'll get back into the swing of things. This episode is more kind of just, getting us back into the rhythm, kind of finding the new flow, whatever that is. One time a week we get to talk and hang out, and we'll go from there. So let's jump in with today's show by answering some of what I think are the biggest questions in professional wrestling right now. Let's get to tell you, this is what we come here for, is to talk about the professional wrestling. And I think, I haven't talked to you guys since Elimination Chamber. So the biggest question I think in professional wrestling, as far as I'm concerned, that we need to talk about is going to be, did Triple H get the Elimination Chamber right? Now, I've seen all over the internet, I've seen a million takes on this. I've seen people who are absolutely in love with Elimination Chamber. They think he nailed it. They think Triple H still can do no wrong, that it was a great main event. And while I think out of context, if you pull that moment out of time, that was a great pay-per-view, great premium live event. I think the problem that I have is that when I look at this in context to what's going on as we move towards WrestleMania, I think they blew their load too early. I think Triple H blew the load too early. I think that the Sami Zayn Roman Reigns match, that was your WrestleMania main event, and you fucked it up. You fucked it up. That was the match that you needed for WrestleMania, and you fucked it up. I think that we have to be objective when we look at this. It's easy to go, well, it got great reactions. It was in Canada. The people loved it. That's fine. There was a way to book that match into some sort of no contest that led to the rematch at WrestleMania that gives us what we rightfully deserve, and that is Sami Zayn as WWE champion. I like the bloodline. I like Roman Reigns. I think Roman Reigns has been great for the last 2 or 3 years. The problem is that wrestling is becoming stale. Roman Reigns is becoming stale. he can still do what he does minus having both championships. They needed to find a way to split those titles and get one of the titles on somebody else so that Monday Night Raw quits suffering. But here's the bigger problem. I think the bigger problem and the question that you have to ask, and I kind of answered this a couple weeks ago when I talked about splitting professional wrestling up into seasons, but that is, I think the way the Royal Rumble is used is outdated. The fact that we have stories that are supposed to have continuity that run 365 days a year get interrupted by one night. There's one match that dictates who's going to be in the main event of WrestleMania, and it doesn't need storytelling. All it needs is somebody to beat 30 other people. They can be the 30th person in that match, have a super unfair advantage, win that match, and now all of a sudden, their main event of WrestleMania, and we have to build all of the other stories around what's going on there. That's a problem. That's inefficient in 2023 as far as booking wrestling. And I think that for I'm not going to say for the first time, but I think for maybe one of the biggest times, we are seeing this right in front of us play out where the organic story is there. It is set up. It would be triumphant. It would be perfect. Yet we are going to have to acquiesce to this dated system of whoever wins the Royal Rumble has to be in the main event. So when you ask me, did Triple H get the Elimination Chamber right? I don't know that he got it wrong, but I don't think that he got it right. I think that this is definitely a miss. I think that we are 30-something days out from WrestleMania. Okay? 30 days out from your biggest show of the year. And you haven't had Cody Rhodes and Roman Reigns come face to face one time yet since the Royal Rumble. But yet you have all of this heat and all of this energy surrounding Sami Zayn and Roman Reigns, and the energy's still there. Don't get it twisted. Like, you could do that again and it would be just as effective. That's why, yes, short answer, no, I don't think that WWE and Triple H got the Elimination Chamber right. Do I think that it was a solid event? 100%. I think that from top to bottom, it was a good premium live event. I just think in context for where it is in the year, heading into WrestleMania, it's not right. It's not what we need. Sami Zayn versus Roman Reigns should be the main event at WrestleMania this year. But let's talk about WrestleMania, right? Let's answer my second biggest question in wrestling right now, and that is this WrestleMania card really what WWE wanted? Are we really staring, when we look at WrestleMania Hollywood, is this the card that they thought they were going to be staring down? Because we hear the rumors that Triple H had this road mapped out since October. That this is Triple H's efficient booking, and he knew exactly what he was doing, and he had the roadmap laid out since October, and here we are now in first day of March, and to me, everything looks like it's in complete shambles. Let's talk about what the card looks like, right? So let's talk about the host of WrestleMania. This is Hollywood. You have the opportunity to choose from, just a giant pool of celebrities, and the host of WrestleMania is The Miz. That feels like you undershot that. It feels like you settled on The Miz. And nothing wrong with The Miz. The Miz will be great. But there's not a big splash. That's not getting media attention. You're not setting the world on fire. The wrestling fans will be okay with it, but the rest of the world's not. Nobody's that excited that The Miz is the host of WrestleMania. So let's keep looking down let's look at, this is Hollywood, right, baby? This is the big one. This is the one that we've been sold on for the last 300. After Dallas, we were told this was going to be an explosive WrestleMania. And then we get no Rock. No Dwayne. Dwayne's not showing up. And I think this is key. I think we have to remember this, because I think there's a little bit of a theme surrounding no Rock. And that is, I think this entire WrestleMania, I think Triple H was banking on the idea that this WrestleMania was going to be built around the biggest star in Hollywood. And I think he thought for sure he could get The Rock in some form or fashion to wrestle Roman Reigns for the bloodline, for the head of the table, for whatever you call it. And I think they whiffed. I think as it got closer, they started to figure out it wasn't going to happen. And I think now that maybe externally it's not happening, but internally, I think there is a huge panic within WWE creative right now. There's a scramble to figure out what the rest of this card looks like because you don't have The Rock. You don't have that pillar of a main event. And Cody Rhodes is great, but he's not The Rock. He's not The Rock. And especially they haven't done a good job of putting Roman and Cody in the ring together and selling us on why that matters. Heyman's done a pretty good job. Cody's done a pretty good job. But Roman's been so preoccupied with Sami because that's the organic story and the story that should be told that once again, here we go, heading in 30 days to WrestleMania and we don't have The Rock and our booking's all fucked up. We also don't have Stone Cold, which is something 3 months ago just think about it. 3 months ago, we were being told possibly that on this card, we were getting The Rock, we were getting Stone Cold, we were going to get Logan Paul, we were going to get John Cena. And while a couple of those are still going to come through, I think that 1A and 1B were The Rock and Stone Cold, and it's looking more and more like zero chance either one of them have any kind of presence at WrestleMania. I mean, Stone Cold may have some kind of segment, but it's not looking like The Rock. And let's be honest, anything The Rock does that's not a match will be a disappointment at WrestleMania. You're not going to sell me that if he shows up for some kind of segment that we should be excited about that. It's just not true. So let's look at the actual card. Let's go match by match and let's break down the WrestleMania card. And you tell me that this is Hollywood worthy. Because, I mean, when we talk about Texas, the most stupendous WrestleMania main event of all time, I think Texas delivered. I think Dallas delivered. When you go back and you look at that WrestleMania, there will be fond memories of that WrestleMania. I definitely think it delivered. But you tell me, and maybe I'm crazy, you guys tell me, does this card sound like it's going to hit? So we'll start with Cody and Roman, right? This isn't the match that should be headlining WrestleMania. I'm sorry. It's just not. A couple months ago, I was on board, but with the lackluster build and the way they brought Cody back and Cody winning from the 30th spot, there was just so many missed opportunities. I thought when Rey Mysterio didn't come out in the Royal Rumble, I thought that meant that Sami was going to be the 30th person in the Royal Rumble and eliminate Cody Rhodes. That didn't happen. Cody just went on to win. Cody's just been fed these bullshit matches to hold him over until he actually probably this Friday gets in the ring with Roman Reigns. But either that, this is why the whole SmackDown and Raw thing doesn't work. This is why you can't have two different rosters, and then when it comes to WrestleMania, you decide, oh, these guys are all going to fight each other, but they're not going to be in the same city on a week-to-week basis. It just, for professional wrestling, that doesn't work. So Cody Roman, I'm not sold. This is not a main event. This is a great SummerSlam match. This is a great Backlash match. But this is not going to be, the crowd is not going to buy into this, especially if Sami has any kind of energy going into WrestleMania. I just don't think the crowd's going to buy into this as a WrestleMania main event. This is not on the same level as Brock Lesnar and Roman Reigns. It's just not. So already from a main event standpoint, we're taking a step back. And then, let's move to Charlotte versus Rhea Ripley. This is perfectly fine. There's nothing wrong. There's an A+ women's title match. I have no complaints here. You got this one right. I think that when I look, especially based on early on, there were predictions of certain matches that I thought, the same thing over and over. Finally, we get some new blood. Rhea Ripley, Charlotte Flair, all about this. No problems. They've done a decent job of building it so far, so I'm not going to complain there. Bianca Belair and Asuka. This feels a little thrown together to me. I'm not going to lie. This definitely feels like a swerve. You're not going to convince me in any form or fashion that Triple H had this in mind in October, that this was on the roadmap. Now, I've read the reports that Ronda Rousey taking like a couple weeks off in January derailed the Bianca Belair main event. I don't get how does that derail? How does her taking off 1 month in January derail Bianca Belair and forces you to have to put Asuka? I don't get it. I don't get that. That doesn't make sense to me. But that's where we are. We're gonna get this match. And this is a legacy match, right? This is a match that's once again going to be sold to us based on these records that WWE loves to shove down our throat. Because I believe if Bianca Belair wins the match against Asuka at WrestleMania, she will become the longest reigning Raw Women's Champion of all time. So there it is. There's your answer. There's no parity. There's zero chance that Asuka wins that match. Asuka is a placeholder for Bianca Belair, so Bianca can win her match at WrestleMania and go on to be the longest reigning Monday Night Raw or Monday Raw Women's Champion. And if you look at, it's been one of the most lackluster title runs of all time. It's been such bullshit. It had so much opportunity, and at this point, I am convinced that Triple H does not know what he's doing. I mean, I am. I at one point I said give him time, but at this point, when I start to look at how this card's coming together and like the way they're so heavily reliant on these records and these one-liners and stupendous and record here and most days here, WWE's become so pigeonholed to these fucking buzzword 1,000 days for Roman. Bianca's the longest this. So-and-so's won. They love to put up those little statistics that make everybody go, oh, this record doesn't fucking matter, but, sell us on it, WWE. Sell us on it. Then we got Logan Paul versus Seth Rollins. This will be one of the better matches on the card. I got no issue with this one. But once again, it's a part-timer who's going to come in and steal the show. It's a little bit embarrassing that Logan Paul once again is going to show up after taking a break, and he's going to steal the show. And this will be one of the better matches on the card because Seth Rollins is an entertainer and Logan Paul is an entertainer, and they're going to go train for this match behind the scenes, and this will have some big high spots that feel good. And so nothing wrong there. This is great for like a celebrity match. Can't complain. Usos versus KO and Sami Zayn seems to still be slated in. This is fine. This is just not what we wanted. It feels like consolation at this point. It feels like a downgrade for Sami Zayn. And I don't like that for him. Like, I think that still, even now, you could somehow work Cody into an injury angle and go forward with Sami Zayn versus Roman Reigns, and the WWE Universe would be much more interested than they are in the Usos versus KO and Sami Zayn. Because, I mean, really, when I look at this, it's also still kind of a mess of booking, because right now Jay is starting to get over kind of as an anti-hero, and if you just reinsert him right back into the bloodline and force him into a match with KO and Sami Zayn, I think you completely squash his momentum. You're going to completely squash Sami Zayn's momentum. You have already completely shit the bed with Kevin Owens, which is, I said it. Kevin Owens when Triple H took over, Kevin Owens came out hot, man. It felt like we had a new Stone Cold Steve Austin. And then they saw the Sammy stuff kind of come into being, so they pulled Kevin, and they were like, well, let's pull him. We'll save him until Sammy's ready. But Sammy never really cooled off. And so by proxy, KO has kind of been just put on the back burner, and his push has been completely fucking ruined. I mean, here we go. Kevin Owens was 6 months ago. Kevin Owens was one of the hottest acts in professional wrestling. And now you're telling me that he may be a possible candidate to win the tag team championships at WrestleMania. That's if they even pull the trigger and let him win. We could be staring at 6 more months of the bloodline. If WWE in the next 30 days doesn't see any viable options, be it Cody Rhodes, Sami Zayn, Kevin Owens, to take the titles off of anybody in the bloodline, it may be business as usual. We may be talking at SummerSlam once again about who's going to dethrone the Usos, who's going to dethrone Roman Reigns. It's all possible, right? Then we get to this joke. We get to this joke of Brock Lesnar versus Omos. And this has to be a joke, right? This has to be a sick joke. This has to be WWE and Triple H or Vince McMahon or whoever's pulling the fucking strings at this point. This has to be them going, let's give everybody the opposite of what they would want. Nobody, absolutely nobody wants to see this match. Absolutely nobody wants to see Omos at WrestleMania. Nobody. There's nobody at this point. I don't want to see Omos in NXT. Omos, he's big, right? Wow, he's big, real tall. And y'all know I'm a proponent for big wrestlers, but he's not ready for WrestleMania. He's not ready for Brock Lesnar. This is a joke. This is obviously a match to get Brock Lesnar back on the right track. Brock can defeat the giant Omos. It gives him a little credibility. They can rebuild Brock back up. But like, I don't know, man. I just feel like this is so much better suited for like a match on Monday Night Raw than it is for a joke on the WrestleMania card. Like, what is Brock Lesnar going to suplex Omos 35 times and possibly murder the man? It doesn't. Nobody wants this. And even worse, based on the promo between MVP and Brock Lesnar, nobody wants this. Nobody. It's just bad all the way around. It takes everything that we've come to kind of love about Brock Lesnar and it kind of makes him feel a little bit goofy. It's supposed to make Omos feel like this, but what has Omos done to feel worthy of this, number one? And number two, like nobody believes Omos is a credible threat to anybody. It's a fucking absolute joke. Then we got John Cena and Austin Theory. This will be one of the better matches on the card, which is not saying a lot because the first thing is, how much does Cena actually have to give back to professional wrestling? You know, this is a lot to ask somebody who's been gone now almost a year and a half, who wrestled one tag team match where he was just a puppet who got excited and came in for 20 seconds of like, you know, his 5 moves of doom. But you can't expect John Cena to go out there and put on 30 minutes, which is what this match is going to need to be successful and to kind of pass the torch to Austin Theory. Second problem here is there's no way John Cena is going to be on television weekly through WrestleMania. I just don't see that. If he does, shout out to John Cena for trying to save WrestleMania, but more than likely he's not going to be. And that means that Austin Theory is going to have to carry the build of this match all the way into WrestleMania for the next 30 days, which I just don't. There's not too many guys like Kevin Owens. What he did with Stone Cold, where he carried that program all the way to WrestleMania single-handedly by himself. There's not a lot of guys who can do that. And I will tell you that Austin Theory is not one of those. This iteration of Austin Theory is not one of the guys who could do it. If Austin Theory was still the douchebag with the camera, sure, he could come out and present his douchebaggery to the crowd week after week, and they would hate him and they would boo him, and Cena would be this big hero at WrestleMania. But the way it stands right now, Theory can't carry this to WrestleMania. So that means Cena's going to have to show up probably via satellite 2 or 3 more times to build this match. And this match will be a solid match, but once again, just like Logan Paul and Seth Rollins, this is another one of those, like, Cena at this point is more celebrity than he is professional wrestler. So now you have 2 matches on the card that are pretty much dominated by people who are celebrities. So then we move down the card, and it looks like, you know, we're going to get Bray Wyatt versus Bobby Lashley, which is fine. Which is going to be another one of these super fucking confusing Bray Wyatt stories where you have to read in between the lines and then read in between those lines and then read in between those lines to try to make out what the fuck Bray Wyatt has going on inside his head and why he's chosen Bobby Lashley as his next victim. I don't know. I don't get it. And this is a booking nightmare as far as WWE is concerned, because Bobby Lashley is your most protected superstar in WWE. Without a doubt, Bobby Lashley, I mean, he's protected against Brock Lesnar. He's been protected against with good intention, right? I like Bobby Lashley. I don't think he's great on a microphone, but as far as a character and as far as a specimen, he is fun to watch. But here we go. I predicted this 6 months ago that by SummerSlam, Bray Wyatt was going to be in meaningless feuds that nobody cared about. It's WrestleMania, and I'm not sure, outside of the Bray Wyatt faithful, how many people actually give a fuck about this match and why they would give a shit. Maybe this will get more interesting, but based on some of this promo stuff, all of this read between, like, you can only read between the lines so many times with Bray Wyatt before it becomes a little bit of a circus act. I'm only following the rabbit down the rabbit hole so many times before I go, all right, this is convoluted for the sake of being convoluted. You're that asshole who wants to appear smarter than everybody else for the sake of appearing smarter than everybody else. I'm not convinced that Bray Wyatt is this booking genius. And here we go. We get to see now how committed to Bray Wyatt is WWE. Are they going to let him go over on Bobby Lashley? Or is this going to be another one of these weird, convoluted stories where nobody really comes out on top? You just kind of, like, after the match is over, you scratch your head a couple times and you go, all right, so that happened. Is this like another Mountain Dew pitch black situation? Because that, like, look, let's be honest. That's so far what we've gotten from Bray Wyatt is a Mountain Dew pitch black match. Now we're going to throw him into a program with the most protected superstar in WWE. Is Bray Wyatt going to be taken serious by WWE? Or is he a freak show? Is he a circus act? Is he a guy that they can turn the lights off? They can do a couple cool things. They can paint his face with neon lights and then have Orbeez fall out next to the ring? Or is Bray Wyatt going to be a credible threat? And at this point, who knows, right? So then we go down the card here, and we go Gunther versus Drew McIntyre. That's what it looks like we're getting. And I think it should be Gunther versus Drew McIntyre versus Sheamus. I think that's the match to make. I actually think that has the potential to be the best match on this card. And let's talk about Gunther for a minute. A guy who just consistently shows up and shows out. This is who they should strap their rocket to. This is what WrestleMania should be about. It should be a coming of life of Gunther's story. And instead, this will be buried somewhere down on night one. They'll place this match, and it'll be an amazing match, whether it's Drew and Gunther or Drew, Sheamus, and Gunther. And it will be my match of the night, and it will steal the show, and it will, everybody will give it its flowers, and Triple H will talk about how it's Gunther's time, and then we'll go 6 more months of Roman Reigns and Cody Rhodes. That's just, let's be realistic with the way Triple H and WWE and Vince McMahon handle business is they're never going to do what should be done. And this is what should be done. This match should be featured. This should be the main event of night one of WrestleMania. Because I get it's not going to main event night two, but this should be built up to be huge, and it won't. This will go under the radar as just a normal match. But let's talk about the next 6 months. You really want to start building stars. Gunther's your guy, man. Gunther is your guy. Like, I am sold, and he breaks all the tropes of what I say you have to be a great professional wrestler, but I think he just does it in such a way that, like, his non-personality is what gives him personality. I think the next 6 months for Gunther there should be a rocket strapped on his back, and he should be the next guy in WWE. We got Rey Mysterio, Dominic Mysterio. Nothing wrong here. This has had ample time to kind of bake, and the storytelling has been pretty good. I'm always critical of Dom, but I think that he's found his rhythm as far as being a comedic character. The moment they found that prison Dom character, they hit the nail on the head there. This card, this match has to perform. This can't be a stinker. They're going to have to figure out how to make this a solid match, because if you look at the rest of the card is going to need the emotions that can come from this match. Now, I think Rey Mysterio fully capable of selling this match. I think Dominic Mysterio, if they book it correctly, this could work. This definitely could work. So I'm not mad. I'm way more excited about this than I was 6 months ago, and so not gonna shit on that. Edge and Finn Balor, solid match. To me, this is kind of every year. There's a match that you look at and you go, just solid. Just it's gonna be good. It's not gonna blow the lid off the building, but it'll be good. That's what this is. This feels like anytime AJ Styles is in a match, right? It's going to be good. It'll be a good match. It's not gonna be great. I think more importantly, you have to look at when you look at this WrestleMania, you look at Hollywood, a WrestleMania that's so predicated around like celebrity. But the reality is, for this WrestleMania to be successful, this is going to hinge heavily on how well does the Judgment Day perform. That's reality, right? You look up and down this card. Dominic Mysterio is going to have to, he's going to have to overperform in his match with Rey Mysterio. I think Rhea Ripley's safe. I think that that's going to be a pretty solid match with Charlotte. And then Edge and Finn Balor, you're going to need Finn Balor to show out. And if this is all booked correctly, once again, which I don't assume it will be, but if you book WrestleMania correctly, one of the biggest storylines coming out of WrestleMania could be how well the Judgment Day performed and how they are kind of the premier group on Monday Night Raw. If Rhea Ripley wins the SmackDown Women's title, which is weird because maybe they have to move to SmackDown, if Dom beats Rey Mysterio and kind of passes the torch there, if Finn Balor beats Edge, and then you got to figure Damian Priest is going to be put in some sort of gimmicky battle royal match. But let's say they all four come out of WrestleMania with a victory. That's a lot. That's a lot of momentum that you can use rolling forward for the next 6 months to a year to really lay into the Judgment Day as you kind of stumble into a solid faction. So WrestleMania will very heavily depend on the performances of the Judgment, and I like that. I like this kind of full circle of the Judgment Day started, then there was shaky legs for a minute. I was calling for the disbanding of the Judgment Day, and now all of a sudden we're at WrestleMania and we go, hey, this is going to heavily depend on how well the Judgment Day perform. And then last, I save this for last because I want to talk about it, is this mess of whatever is going on in the women's tag team division, right? I can't decipher where they're trying to go with this because on Monday Night Raw a couple nights ago, we got Damage Control versus Becky and Lita with Trish, and they won, and Becky and Lita are your new tag team champions. And what does that mean for Damage Control? And you have Shayna and Ronda kind of waiting in the wind. So how does this play out? That's the question I have, because I had this all booked out for WWE perfectly, and they went ahead and turned it into a giant clusterfuck. So now look, this is what you made, Triple H. Clean it up. Clean up your mess. Show me how you're going to clean this up. You're sitting here saying you've had this figured out since October. Cool. Show me the roadmap that you have going to WrestleMania to make this make sense, right? Because you want to make it make sense. The only correct answer is Ronda Rousey and Shayna Baszler leaving WrestleMania as the women's tag team champions. Dude, let's be real for a minute. Let's talk about Monday Night Raw. Let's talk about the embarrassment of a main event. And I say embarrassment because that's not a main event. There's nothing wrong with that match. I get that you bring legends back and you allow them to get in the ring and you allow them to put on performances and crowds get interested. But that's not the main. 33 days out from WrestleMania, that's not your main event. Lita's not in ring shape. Nothing. This is not. Look, it's always perceived as a negative when you come out and you go, so-and-so's not in ring shape. Lita did her time. Lita had her heyday. I don't expect Lita to show up and show out against wrestlers who are doing this on a weekly basis. But what I do expect is for WWE to put people in a better situation than to throw Lita into the main event of Monday Night Raw and kind of expose, like, that was a messy tag team match. I don't think that Trish Stratus was effective, and when she came out, I think that it completely ruined any momentum that Damage Control had. I get it. I get one of two things. If we're building towards Damage Control versus Becky, Lita, Trish at WrestleMania, okay, fine. So stupid. Why do you even have women's tag team titles if then you're going to turn around and make a triple threat tag team match at WrestleMania for, whatever. If that's what you're doing, cool. Clean it up, Triple H. It's messy. More than likely, I guess the logic would be if we're going to go Ronda Rousey and Shayna Baszler, we had to get the tag team titles off of a heel tag team onto a babyface tag team, which would be Becky and Lita. Fine, that's great. If this ends up being Ronda and Shayna, I'm all for it. Clean it up. Start telling the fucking story, not 1 week before WrestleMania. That's my problem, right? We're 30 days out, and some of these stories don't even have a beginning. We're cleaning up stories when we've had, look, we went through, in December, we went through like 9 weeks of having time to set all these stories up, especially if you had them ready to go since October. And now here we are, 30 days out from WrestleMania, and half of these stories have zero continuity. They have zero long-term build. And I'm a WWE person, but I'm going to be critical because I think 30 days out, it's messy. Triple H has to clean this up, and you don't have a lot of time to do it. So that leads me to my last question. This leads me to my last question for today that I want answered, and that is, it's a very interesting question here, but when is WWE going to grow a set of balls and pull the trigger on this next generation of superstars and finally stop relying so heavily on these veterans and old heads to carry them through poor booking? When is it going to happen? Because let's look at, I just spent the last 30, 45 minutes going through a WrestleMania card that is the same list of who's, right? Same names we see every year. People are tired of those names. And on the bench right now, and I'm tired of reading articles about Triple H is high on this guy. Triple H likes this guy. Triple H sees a moment for this guy. Then fucking pull the trigger. It's WrestleMania. Why is there no LA Knight being featured heavily in WrestleMania? That's your guy. That's your next big superstar is LA Knight. That's what the fans really want to see. Pull the trigger. You have him on SmackDown losing to the New Day. And there's nothing wrong with the New Day. I love the New Day. But like at this point in time, LA Knight went through a whole program with Bray Wyatt that was set up for him to fail. He was destined to fail. And what does he do? He comes out on the other side basically unscratched with a lot of new fans, a lot of people pulling for him. And what does he get rewarded with? Kind of a joke of a match at SmackDown. And so maybe, well, I don't know. 30 days, what are you going to do with him? There's nothing to do with him. How about Montez Ford? When are you going to grow a set of balls and pull the trigger on Montez Ford? That guy is a fucking superstar. That guy is ready for the big. That guy, get the fucking titles off of Roman. It's time. Split the titles up. We need fresh blood. Pull the trigger. Let's get to the next generation. Montez Ford is ready. He is a superstar, and you're going to wait until that iron runs cold. And for what? Elias is still over with the crowd. Thank God Rhea Ripley is being pushed in this WrestleMania as a little bit of new blood, right? But where's Raquel Rodriguez? Where are these younger generational talents that you try to sell us on week in and week out? And then when WrestleMania comes, they're nowhere to be seen, nowhere to be found. It just, I'm tired of this. I'm tired of hearing about Gunther as the next big thing. And then, this time next year, we'll be talking about Gunther is the next big thing. LA Knight is the next big thing. Montez Ford is the next big thing. When will WWE just grow a set of balls and decide, look, this WrestleMania, we're 30 days out. It's already a fucking mess. Let's just start featuring some of the new people. Let's put them in positions to be successful. But no, we roll down this card, and what do we see? We see Roman Reigns, fine. Cody Rhodes, this is fine. Charlotte, Seth Rollins, Brock Lesnar, Omos, John Cena, Bobby Lashley, Rey Mysterio, Edge. It's a who's who of what we've gotten every year, and that's fine. I got no problem with those people being on the card, but not at the expense of people like LA Knight. Not at the expense of people like Montez Ford. Not at the expense of people like Raquel Rodriguez. Not at the expense of people like Elias, who deserve a moment at WrestleMania, and the time will come and go. This is like when you look back at people like Damian Sandow, people who get over, Zack Ryder, people who get over with the crowd, and WWE almost has a refusal to allow them to be successful. Let's talk a little bit about a little bit of news before I get out of here. There's something going on with Roman versus Sammy too. I've seen it all over the internet. Basically, there was a house show scheduled that was supposed to have Roman Reigns and Solo Sikoa fight against Sammy and KO, but because of poor booking going into the last 30 days of WrestleMania, they haven't figured out a way to get KO and Sammy into the ring together in a meaningful manner. So now you're having to change house shows for continuity issues. Like this just doubles down on what I'm talking about, of this idea that Triple H he's had this roadmap since October, which I do believe he's had. To be clear, I think Triple H always knew the destination he was headed toward. I just think he had absolutely no idea how he was going to get there. And I think that he's flying by, the seat of, whatever the expression is, flying by the seat of his pants, whatever it is, this expression that says something like that. But he's doing that, and he's just closing his eyes and running into walls and hoping that he gets to his destination kind of unscratched. And that, I think this shows that. The fact that they're doing Roman Reigns versus Sami Zayn rematch at a house show. No, man, do Roman Reigns versus Sami Zayn 2 at WrestleMania. That's your main event. That is your main event. WWE is expected to pursue several top AEW stars this year. No shit, right? I mean, every year. This is funny that this is a headline in the news. And it's every year, right? WWE is expected to pursue several top AEW stars. Of course they are. And AEW is expected to pursue a bunch of top WWE stars. These companies just rinse and recycle and trade people over and over. And the bigger problem is that both companies have these fucking overly bloated rosters, and they have no idea how to use them. And so they go gather up all of these wrestlers and sit them on the sideline, and they don't know what to do with them. That's the bigger problem that should be talked about. That's the article that needs, not the article talking about they plan to pursue several top AEW stars. No shit, right? FTR. I'm sure WWE is going to make a play for FTR. When Bryan Danielson's contract comes up, WWE is going to attempt to try to pull him back into the company. I'm sure they're talking to Andrade. I'm sure they have their eyeballs on MJF. I'm sure there's people putting out fillers to see if Kenny Omega would make the jump. And some of those names, what those names have to understand is there's certain names on that list that the WWE will sign just to keep them away from AEW. That's where Kenny Omega and MJF and those guys have to be careful, is that I think that WWE would sign them just to keep them off of AEW television. And there was a point in time where I would have told you, yeah, man, I want MJF in WWE. And at this point, I just don't think there's just not enough good booking to go around. It feels to me like WWE can only book one or two solid stories, and so I don't want MJF over there. I'm good with where MJF is. But yeah, bullshit. Both companies are constantly going to sign and release. It's a circle. And it's good for the business, I think, because it gives guys a little bit of leverage, but I don't think it's news. Retailers list upcoming release date for AEW Fight Forever. Okay. I think I saw Best Buy listed it at March 31st. Better sooner rather than later. I love the video game community. I love video games, and I'm definitely a video game fan, but I think it's funny to watch. There is an IWC in every intellectual property, be it video games, be it movies, be it wrestling. There is an IWC, and I guess you would call it the internet video game community, maybe, but they exist everywhere. There's this group of people who are just going to complain no matter what, and I think it's hilarious to watch these wrestling fans go back and forth on WWE 2K23 and Fight Forever and whichever game you have allegiance to and what's going to be good and what's going to be bad. I look at it this way. I commend AEW because it looks like, at least with AEW Fight Forever, they're trying to put together a video game that will have a little bit of longevity, that it'll stand a little bit of the that it's a game of service, that there will be wrestlers updated and brought out. And so, you have to be patient. If this is their first video game, you have to be a little bit patient. They're trying to get it right. They're trying to get the ratings in the right position. They're trying to give you blood, but then when they add blood to the game, the ESRB tells them, well, that's a mature game. So there's a lot of hurdles that AEW's had to jump through to get this game to come out. So you got to sit back and you got to take it easy on them. As far as the people with WWE 2K23, that game to me, from everything I've seen in the last couple weeks, that game looks like a nightmare. And you get these people who are just so sold on this idea, but it looks like your standard kind of Madden bullshit, rinse and repeat. Just add a new little, add a little fresh coat of paint to it, and it's ready to go. I've seen some of the entrances. The entrances aren't updated from last year. You see a lot of character models aren't updated from last year. You see a lot of people that are omitted from the game. I don't think Bray Wyatt is in the game yet. I don't think Pat McAfee's in the game, but Bad Bunny is. Whatever. I think the video game community is fun to watch. I like video games. I love wrestling video games, but I just think it's interesting the way people overreact to this things. Like when games get delayed or and then you see a release date pop up. It's funny to me. WWE King and Queen of the Ring event location revealed. Apparently this is going to be in Saudi Arabia, which is fucking interesting as hell to me, that we're going to have Queen of the Ring in Saudi Arabia. This is the product of contractual obligations. This is what happens when you promise a country 2 events a year. You got to put 2 events a year there. And we know Crown Jewel, which has kind of come to be an event we expect, which is fine. But now we're going to do King and Queen of the Ring in Saudi Arabia. That's interesting. That's an interesting event. I think it makes sense if you're looking at it from a logical standpoint. King and Queen of the Ring, they don't really need a lot of story cohesion to put on those events. So you don't have to worry about guys like Sami Zayn or certain people who aren't going to go to the country. You don't have to worry about how it affects their story. I think that it's kind of a standalone event, and that's great. Whatever. If it appeases that contractual obligation, that's awesome. I'm glad you can get that over with. I think it's also an opportunity for them to bring in any big names that the Saudis want to see. Right? If they want Goldberg, then you can stick Goldberg in the King of the Ring tournament, and that type of stuff works. So I think from a standpoint that it doesn't actually disrupt the actual flow of what's going on, this makes sense. But to me, okay, it does seem weird to do Queen of the Ring in Saudi Arabia. CM Punk writes to a fan, "I will wrestle again just to upset you. You watch no matter what, no matter where." This comes after Mark Henry went on the Busted Open podcast radio show, whatever that is, and kind of discussed how he didn't think CM Punk was a cancer to the wrestling business. He more thought that CM Punk is an outlier in the professional wrestling business. I think that is a solid assessment of CM Punk. I like that assessment. That CM Punk, I don't think he's a cancer. I think CM Punk does a lot. I think he means well. I think he has a very direct vision for what he thinks professional wrestling should and can be. It may be a little utopian what he believes, but I do believe that ultimately he wants the best for professional wrestling, and I think Mark Henry's assessment was correct. I think he wrestles again. I really do. I think that he'll wrestle again, and I hope he wrestles again. I think that he is an asset to professional wrestling. I think that whether it's in AEW, whether it's somehow back in WWE, whether it's in New Japan Pro Wrestling, I think that there's a spot for CM Punk. I think that one of the, if I'm playing fantasy booker here, if I'm Tony Khan, you've done absolutely nothing with Ring of Honor. You've shit the bed. You bought the company and you haven't done anything with it. If I'm Tony Khan, I take Ring of Honor and somehow I have CM Punk come back and I have some sort of match that sees CM Punk winning the rights to Ring of Honor. And he gets to run and be in control of Ring of Honor. And I allow CM Punk to take that brand and kind of do as he sees fit with it. He's able to make himself the face of the company, able to hold the title, able to run it kind of like a rogue promotion, kind of like an ECW, make it, break the kayfabe a little bit and make it feel like he's doing something wrong. But I think if I was Tony Khan, I would allow CM Punk to spearhead Ring of Honor and kind of build a separate company in his own image. I think it could work. I definitely think like a Chicago, run it kind of out of Chicago in that Midwest area. I definitely think that could work for CM Punk, but he has a ton of value, right? I get that like maybe he's overworn his welcome with the smarky AEW elite audience, but as far as professional wrestling goes, people are going to watch when he returns. And last but not least here, we have a Riddle update. So Riddle posted an Instagram post speaking basically about how he's ready to return to wrestling. He's gotten his life together. He's set up boundaries. He's a new man. He had all these breakthroughs. Here's my thoughts on Riddle, guys. And y'all, anybody who's been around this podcast for a while knows that early on we did something called the Douchebag Awards. And I believe Riddle was, if not the first, he was in the top 3 of the Douchebag Awards. And with good reason, and I'm going to double down right now on what I said I probably wouldn't do anymore, and that is call somebody a douchebag. But this feels very douchebaggery here. Look, Riddle comes out and you post yourself on Instagram sitting next to a porn star with a fucking grill in your mouth, right? And you say that you're setting boundaries for the first time in your life and you're having breakthroughs. Let's talk about something here. Making poor life choices by putting your family to the side, dating a porn star, all while being just an overall douchebag wearing a grill, that doesn't qualify as working on yourself. You can't take a bunch of these like stereotypically dumb things and go, I'm having a breakthrough. It feels like this is a wrestling character, but the reality is I don't think this is for his character. I think this is his real life. There's a reason WWE has not brought him back to television. Like there is a reason. And I think it is that they're looking at this and going, fuck, maybe this time off has been worse than him actually being in the ring. Like, come on, man. Like grills went out of style 10 years ago. Nobody's doing that anymore. You're out here sitting next to a porn star, which is fine. You do you, bro. You do you. Whatever you want to do. But you've kind of, it looks. I don't know the ins and outs, but it looks like you've essentially pushed your family to the side, and you're throwing out things like I've set up boundaries for the first time in my life. What does that even mean? What does that mean when you're not, when you're estranged from your family? Whatever, right? It's just like, I don't know. This is where it becomes hard for me. This is where I talk about like the separating the wrestler from the actual person. It becomes hard because I get intertwined in this, and like I have a strong belief in family. And so I see this and it makes me root against Riddle. That's what it does. And it's hard because you do have to separate. And a lot of people have demons and things they have to fight against. But then I see him post this on Instagram and I go like, let's bring back the douchebag awards and let's hand him the douchebag, lifetime achievement award. But that is all the time we have this week for the show. Make sure to tell a friend to listen to the Casual Wrestling Podcast and subscribe and like this week's episode. Make sure to tune into the Nerdy D Show, which is a pop culture show where we talk about all kinds of fun and stupid stuff. That'll be with Level Up Lauren, and that will post on Thursdays. No, it'll post on Fridays. It'll record on Thursdays, post on Fridays. I'm going to be setting up the Discord. I will drop the Discord link in the description of this podcast and this video. So join up. We'll start getting some topics on there, start trying to get some conversation going, start trying to build community a little bit. And I think back to basics for the next 3 months. We'll kind of see where this goes. But as always, I am the Notorious Nerdy D, and I'm going to ring the final bell.
Step in the ring, if you ready, let's go. Hey, Casual Wrestling Community Show. You already know, talking WWE. Keep it rolling and hosted by Notorious Nerdy D. Dope show that you gon' find. Tune in cause it's online. Hit 'em with a figure 4 leg lock, power driver or clothesline.